Life often presents us with challenges that seem impossible to overcome. Have you ever faced a situation where everything seemed to be against you, and the only thing left was to trust in something greater than yourself? Throughout history, faith has been the key that has transformed despair into hope, weakness into strength, and obstacles into opportunities. Today, we will explore an inspiring story that reveals the incredible power of faith and how, when we trust in God, even the impossible becomes possible. Faith is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It moves mountains, changes lives, and gives meaning to our existence. But faith is not just a passive belief. It is an action, a decision, and sometimes a risk. When we trust in God, we step into the unknown, knowing that He will guide us even when we cannot see the path ahead. In today's story, we will see how faith transformed a moment of uncertainty into a divine intervention. When all hope seemed lost, a simple act of trust in God changed everything. This story teaches us that no matter how big our problems are, God is always greater. So, if you have ever doubted or felt that your faith was being tested, stay with us, because this message is for you. Before we begin, if you enjoy content about faith, biblical stories, and inspiring messages, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. This way, you won't miss any videos that help strengthen your spiritual journey. Now, let's dive into today's story. Faith is not just about believing. It's about trusting even when things don't make sense. Imagine being in a situation where you have to choose between fear and faith. That is exactly what happened in the story we will explore today. There was once a person who faced an enormous challenge. Everything around them suggested that failure was inevitable. The circumstances were overwhelming. The obstacles were too great, and there was no logical way out. But instead of giving in to despair, this person decided to trust in God. At first, it was not easy. Doubts crept in. What if things didn't go as planned? What if trusting in God led to disappointment? These are questions that many of us ask when faced with uncertainty. However, the person in our story chose to act in faith. This moment of decision is crucial in any journey of faith. Often, we wait for clear signs or undeniable proof before taking a step forward. But faith requires us to move even when we don't have all the answers. Hebrews 11 verse 1 tells us, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." This means that true faith is believing before seeing the results. When this person took a step of faith, something incredible happened. What seemed impossible began to change. God was at work behind the scenes, orchestrating events in ways that no one could predict it. This is the essence of faith, trusting in God's plan even when we don't understand it. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of individuals who had to trust in God despite uncertainty. Abraham left his home without knowing where he was going. Moses faced the Red Sea with no apparent escape route. David confronted Goliath with nothing but a slingshot. In each of these cases, faith was a key that unlocked divine intervention. Similarly, in our own lives, we will face moments where everything seems uncertain. Maybe you are going through a difficult situation right now. Perhaps you are struggling with financial difficulties, health problems, relationship issues, or uncertainty about the future. In these moments, it is easy to focus on the problem and forget that God is in control. But what if we chose to trust Him instead? What if, instead of worrying, we place our faith in the one who has already overcome the world? John 16 verse 33 reminds us of Jesus' words, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." This means that no matter what we are facing, we are never alone. Faith is not about ignoring reality. It is about seeing beyond it. It is about knowing that even when things seem chaotic, God has a plan. He is not surprised by our struggles, and He is never caught off guard. His plans for us are good, even when we don't understand them. The person in our story chose to believe this truth. They decided to trust God despite their fears, and because of that, they witnessed a miracle. This is the power of faith. It changes our perspective, strengthens our hearts, and invites God to work in our lives in ways we never imagined. Perhaps you are wondering, how can I have that kind of faith? The answer is simple: by spending time with God. Faith grows when we hear His word, pray, and step out in trust. Romans 10 verse 17 says, "Faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. This means that the more we immerse ourselves in His truth, the stronger our faith becomes. Another key aspect of faith is action. James 2 verse 17 reminds us that faith without works is dead. This doesn't mean that we earn God's blessings through actions, but it does mean that faith should be demonstrated through how we live. When we trust God, we act accordingly. We step forward even when we don't see the whole picture. We believe in His promises, and we live as if they are already fulfilled. This is exactly what the person in our story did. Their faith led into action, and God honored their trust. The result? A situation that seemed impossible was completely transformed. What once looked like a dead end became a testimony of God's power. As we reflect on this story, let's ask ourselves, what areas of our lives require faith? Where is God calling us to trust Him more? Maybe it's in our careers, our relationships, or our personal struggles. Whatever it is, know that God is faithful. When we put our trust in Him, He will never fail us. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about knowing who holds the answers. It's about believing that even in our darkest moments, God is working for our good. Romans 8 verse 28 assures us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. So, if you're facing a challenge today, remember this: God is bigger than your problems. He is working behind the scenes, preparing a way where there seems to be none. All He asks is that we trust Him. Faith is not about having a perfect life without problems. It is about knowing that, despite the struggles, God is always present. Many times, we focus too much on what we lack or on the difficulties we face, but faith invites us to see beyond what is in front of us. It pushes us to believe that God has a greater purpose, even when everything seems uncertain. Imagine being in a situation where all logical options are exhausted. The resources are gone, the path forward is blocked, and fear begins to creep in. This is where faith is tested the most. Anyone can have faith when things are going well, but true faith is demonstrated when challenges arise. That is when we must decide whether to let fear control us or trust that God has a way. Throughout history, those who trusted in God saw the impossible become possible. They were not perfect people, nor did they always have all the answers. They were simply individuals who chose to trust in something greater than themselves. Their strength did not come from their own abilities, but from their confidence that God was in control. Think of Noah, who built an ark when there was no sign of rain. The people around him probably mocked him, questioning his decision, but he acted in faith, trusting that God's word was true. In the end, his trust saved him and his family. This teaches us that faith is not based on what we see, but on who we believe in. In our lives, there will be moments when we must take steps without fully understanding what lies ahead. It might be a new job opportunity, a major life change, or a decision that requires courage. In these moments, faith is what gives us the strength to move forward. It reminds us that God's plans are higher than our own, and that He is guiding us even when we cannot see the full picture. One of the most beautiful aspects of faith is that it transforms our perspective. Instead of seeing problems as obstacles, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth. Instead of focusing on limitations, we focus on God's power. This does not mean that difficulties disappear, but it does mean that we face them with a different mindset. Fear tells us that we are alone, that failure is inevitable, and that things will never change. Faith tells us that God is with us, that He is working in our favor, and that He will never abandon us. When we embrace this truth, our attitude changes. We begin to walk with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, we are in God's hands. Sometimes, faith requires us to wait. We live in a world that values quick results, but God's timing is different from ours. There are moments when we must be patient and trust that He is working behind the scenes. This is not always easy, but those who wait on the Lord are never disappointed. Isaiah 40 verse 31 reminds us, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Waiting is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of trust. It means believing that God knows what is best for us and that His plans are perfect. Even when we do not understand the delays, we can be sure that He is preparing something greater. Faith also requires surrender. Many times, we try to control everything in our lives. We want answers, certainty, and guarantees before making a decision. But faith asks us to let go and trust that God is in control. It means surrendering our worries, fears, and plans into His hands, knowing that He will take care of us. Jesus taught us the importance of trust when He said in Matthew 6, verse 26, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" If God takes care of the birds, how much more will He take care of us? This verse reminds us that we are deeply loved and that God is aware of every detail of our lives. When we truly understand this, our faith grows stronger. We stop worrying about things beyond our control and begin to rest in God's promises. This does not mean that life will always be easy, but it does mean that we will face challenges with peace in our hearts, knowing that God is with us. Faith is not just a religious concept. It is a way of life. It influences how we think, how we act, and how we face difficulties. When we live by faith, we become people of hope, courage, and strength. We inspire others through our trust in God, and we become a testimony of His goodness. Perhaps right now, you are going through a season where your faith is being tested. Maybe you feel like giving up, like the weight of your problems is too heavy to bear. If that is the case, remember this: God has not abandoned you. He sees your struggles, He hears your prayers, and He is working on your behalf. No matter how dark the situation seems, light always comes after the storm. No difficulty lasts forever, and every trial has a purpose. Sometimes we do not understand why things happen the way they do, but one day we will see how every challenge shaped us, strengthened us, and brought us closer to God. Faith is a journey. It is not about having all the answers, but about trusting the one who does. It is about walking forward even when the path is unclear. It is about believing that no matter what happens, God is with us and that His plans for us are good. So, as you face today's challenges, choose faith over fear. Choose to believe that God is working in your favor. Choose to trust that, in His perfect time, everything will make sense. And remember, He is always faithful. One of the keys to strengthening our faith is by constantly reminding ourselves of God's promises. The Bible is full of assurances that remind us of His unchanging nature and His unwavering love for us. When we face doubt or fear, we can look to His Word for comfort and guidance. The promises of God are like anchors that keep us grounded, even in the stormiest of seas. When you start to feel overwhelmed by life's challenges, take a moment to reflect on the truth of God's promises. He promises to be with us in every situation, to provide for our needs, and to give us peace that surpasses understanding. These promises are not just words. They are the foundation of our faith. It's easy to forget these promises when we are consumed by our circumstances. The daily pressures, the unexpected challenges, and the uncertainties can cause us to lose sight of what is truly important. But faith is about looking beyond the immediate and trusting in the eternal. It's about knowing that no matter what happens, God's plan is greater than anything we face. One of the most powerful aspects of faith is that it enables us to look beyond ourselves. It helps us see the bigger picture and understand that our lives are part of a larger story. This perspective changes everything. It shifts our focus from our own problems to the greater purpose God has for our lives. This doesn't mean that our struggles are insignificant. On the contrary, every difficulty we face has a potential to strengthen our character and deepen our trust in God. But when we view our lives through the lens of faith, we begin to understand that each trial is an opportunity for growth. Each challenge is a chance to rely more on God and less on our own strength. When we trust in God's sovereignty, we can face anything with confidence. We know that He is in control and that nothing happens without His permission. This knowledge brings peace in the midst of chaos. It allows us to rest, knowing that God is working all things together for our good. There will be times when we don't understand why things happen the way they do. We may question why we're facing certain trials or why certain prayers seem unanswered. But in those moments, we must remember that God sees the bigger picture. He knows what we need, and He knows when we need it. We may not always get the answers we want, but we can trust that God's timing is perfect. His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. When we trust in His wisdom and His timing, we can be confident that He will lead us through every trial and bring us to a place of peace and understanding. Another essential aspect of faith is prayer. Prayer is how we communicate with God, and it is through prayer that we build our relationship with Him. Prayer is not just about asking for things. It's about spending time with God, seeking His guidance, and listening for His voice. In times of difficulty, prayer becomes even more crucial. When we are facing challenges, prayer is the source of strength that keeps us grounded. It is in prayer that we find comfort, peace, and direction. It is through prayer that we surrender our worries to God and allow Him to carry the burdens that we cannot bear alone. The Bible encourages us to pray without ceasing, to bring our concerns to God with thanksgiving, and to trust that He hears our prayers. When we pray, we are reminded that we are not alone. We have a loving Father who cares for us and is always willing to listen. Through prayer, we are able to align our hearts with God's will. We learn to trust His plans and to let go of our own desires. As we grow in faith, prayer becomes less about asking for specific outcomes and more about seeking God's presence and His will for our lives. One of the greatest acts of faith is the ability to trust in God even when we don't have all the answers. Life can be uncertain, and there will be times when we don't know what the future holds. But faith gives us a confidence to move forward, even in the face of uncertainty. It's important to remember that faith is not about having everything figured out. It's about trusting God in the midst of the unknown. It's about taking the next step, even when the path ahead is unclear. It's about believing that even when we can't see the way, God is leading us every step of the way. We are called to walk by faith, not by sight. This means that we trust in God's promises, even when we don't see immediate results. We trust that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail of our lives for His glory and our good. When we choose to walk by faith, we experience a sense of peace that transcends our understanding. We may still face challenges, but we know that God is with us and that He is bigger than any problem we may encounter. As we continue on this journey of faith, we must remember that we are never alone. God is always with us, guiding us, protecting us, and strengthening us. He will never leave us or forsake us, and His love for us is unshakable. Our faith is what sustains us in difficult times. It is what gives us hope, even when everything around us seems hopeless. It is what keeps us moving forward, knowing that no matter what happens, God is in control. When we look back at our lives, we can see how God has been faithful every step of the way. We can see how He has brought us through trials, how He has answered our prayers, and how He has provided for us in ways we never expected. Each of these moments strengthens our faith and reminds us of God's goodness. And as we continue to trust in Him, we grow stronger, more resilient, and more confident in His ability to guide us through every situation. Our faith is not just for ourselves. It is a testimony to others. When we walk by faith, we inspire those around us to trust God, even in their own trials. Our lives become a living testimony of God's power, and our faith becomes a beacon of hope to those who are struggling. So, as you continue on your journey of faith, remember that God is with you every step of the way. Trust in His promises, rely on His strength, and never give up on the hope that He provides. Your faith is powerful, and it has the ability to change not only your life, but the lives of those around you. As we conclude, remember that faith is not just a belief, but a way of life. It is a daily decision to trust in God, no matter the circumstances. It's about living with the assurance that God is with us and that His plan for us is perfect. In the Bible, we are encouraged to persevere in faith, to hold fast to what we believe, and to continue walking with God through all seasons of life. Faith is not about avoiding difficulties. It's about trusting God through them. It's about recognizing that He is with us in every moment, guiding us, comforting us, and empowering us to live according to His will. In your own life, you may face challenges that seem impossible to overcome. You may wonder how you can keep going when everything feels so uncertain. But take heart, because your faith is more than enough to carry you through. God has equipped you with everything you need to persevere, and He promises that He will never leave you. When you feel weak, lean into God's strength. When you feel uncertain, trust in His guidance. When you face obstacles, remember that nothing is impossible for Him. Your faith is powerful, and it will sustain you through every storm. Let your faith be a beacon of light to those around you. Share your testimony, encourage others, and be a living example of God's love and power. As you continue to walk by faith, you will inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect that can change lives. And remember, even in the hardest moments, God is always faithful. He is with you, He is for you, and He is working all things together for your good. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep moving forward. Your faith will lead you to victory.